The Zalthari warship materialized above Earth's orbit without warning. Sensors screamed. Alarms howled through every military installation on the planet. Captain Derek Hayes stood on the bridge of the Orbital Defense Station Sentinel-9, watching the massive vessel blot out stars. "Sir, they're hailing us," Lieutenant Kara Bishop said, her voice tight. "Put them through." The screen flickered. A creature appeared, all chitinous plates and compound eyes, mandibles clicking with each syllable. Behind it stood rows of soldiers in gleaming armor, weapons held at attention. "Primitive species of the third planet," the alien commander declared. "I am War Master Thexanol of the Eternal Zalthari Empire. You will submit to Imperial authority immediately. Resistance means extinction. You have one rotation of your world to comply." Derek stared. His jaw worked. A strange sound escaped his throat. "Captain," Kara whispered. Derek pressed his fist against his mouth. His shoulders shook. The sound came again, louder this time. Laughter. Raw, uncontrolled laughter. "Are you damaged?" Thexanol demanded. Derek couldn't stop. Tears streamed down his face. Around the bridge, other officers caught it. Lieutenant Jake Morrison snorted. Commander Lisa Grant covered her mouth, failing to contain giggles. "Eternal Empire," Derek gasped between laughs. "You called yourself the Eternal Empire? This is the proper designation of our glorious dominion spanning 400 star systems. 400. Derek wiped his eyes. 400 systems, and you still use that name? Thexanol's mandibles spread in what might have been confusion or rage. "You mock the Empire? We have conquered species across this galaxy. Our fleets are unstoppable. Our warriors undefeated." Yeah, Derek said, waving his hand. "Eternal this, glorious that. Let me guess? Ancient beyond measure? Ordained by the cosmic order? Destiny manifest among the stars?" The War Master's eyes somehow narrowed despite their insectoid nature. "You dare?" We've read science fiction, buddy," Jake called out. "Like, a lot of it. You're every bad guy from every book ever written. The evil empire shtick, we invented it. We perfected it. We wrote 1,000 variations and made them fight each other for our entertainment." "Impossible. Your species achieved space travel mere decades ago." Right, Lisa said, composure recovered. "But we've been imagining galactic empires since before we split the atom." "Your whole aesthetic? We call it Tuesday." Thexanol's mandibles clacked rapidly. "This changes nothing. Submit or perish." Derek straightened, smile fading into something harder. "Here's the thing about humans and empires, War Master. We've built them. We've toppled them. We've seen every version of your story, and we know exactly how it ends. With your obedience, with your funeral." The transmission cut. Derek turned to his crew. "Get me Admiral Carter. Tell her the Eternal Empire just declared war." He grinned. "And tell her to bring the good ships." The ones we built after reading all those books. Admiral Patricia Carter stood in the war room 3 miles beneath Colorado, surrounded by holographic displays showing the Zalthari fleet. 67 warships now hung in Earth's orbital space, each larger than anything humanity had ever built. She should have been terrified. Instead, she was smiling. "They're positioning in a standard blockade formation," Colonel Ryan Martinez said, highlighting the enemy vessels. "Textbook stuff. Encirclement. Coverage of all major population centers. Threat projection." "Textbook for who?" Patricia asked. "For anyone who's ever read a military strategy guide, apparently." Ryan zoomed in on their formation. "Ma'am, they're using tactics from Sun Tzu. Literally. They're doing the surround the enemy and leave one path of retreat thing." Patricia laughed. "They read one of our books and thought they'd figured us out." "It gets better," Lieutenant Commander Nina Vasquez said from the intelligence station. "We've been analyzing their transmissions, their battle language. A Scalanticoporia was built. It's got loan words from Latin, actual Latin. They encountered one of our Voyager probes, decoded it, and apparently got very inspired by Roman military terminology. You're joking. I wish. They call their soldiers legionaries. Their battle formations are literally called phalanx patterns. War Master Thexanol? His title translates more accurately to centurion. Patricia put her head in her hands, shoulders shaking with laughter. They found our homework and copied it without understanding the assignment. There's more, Nina continued. Their empire structure, constitutional monarchy with a senate. Their expansion philosophy, manifest destiny with a side of white man's burden. Except their bugs. Their war doctrine? Shock and awe, followed by occupation and cultural integration. They're not just using our playbook, they're using the greatest hits from our worst historical mistakes. Have they made any actual threats beyond the initial surrender demand? Patricia asked. Oh, plenty, Ryan said. Thexanol sent a follow-up message an hour ago. He listed their technological superiority, their unbreakable fleet formations, their history of crushing rebellions. Then he gave us 12 hours to surrender instead of 24 because we laughed at him. He got his feelings hurt, Nina added. We've intercepted internal communications. The War Master is furious that we're not afraid. Apparently, every other species they've encountered immediately capitulated or died trying to fight conventionally. We're the first ones who thought they were funny. Patricia walked to the hologram, studying the Zelthari vessels. They were impressive, certainly. Advanced armor, powerful weapons, fusion drives that outclassed Earth's best engines. But their positioning, their tactics, their entire approach screamed borrowed doctrine. What do we know about their actual combat experience, she asked. Nina pulled up a data file. 400 systems conquered over 6,000 years. But here's the thing. Most of those conquests happened against species that were pre-industrial or early space age. The few advanced civilizations they fought either surrendered immediately or were wiped out so thoroughly we can't find reliable combat data. So they've never faced sustained resistance from a technologically comparable opponent. Correct. They went through intimidation and overwhelming first strikes. If that fails, they commit genocide and move on. Patricia nodded slowly. They're bullies. Big, scary bullies with impressive weapons, but bullies nonetheless. Ma'am, Ryan said carefully, they do have impressive weapons. Our simulations show their main batteries could crack a continent. Their shields could shrug off nuclear strikes. If we fight them straight up, we lose. Badly. Then we don't fight them straight up. Patricia turned to her staff. Get me General Marcus Flynn at Special Projects. Tell him to prep the Crazy Eddie Division. Nina blinked. The Theoretical Weapons Group? The ones who design tactics for fighting impossible scenarios. The very same. Also contact Dr. Helen Park at the Institute. I want every science fiction writer, military historian, and game designer we can find in this room within 6 hours. You got to crowdsource our war strategy? Ryan asked. Ryan, these aliens studied our culture and decided to cosplay as the Roman Empire in space. They've read our instruction manuals and think they're prepared for us. Patricia's smile turned sharp. Let's show them the difference between reading about humanity and actually fighting us. Get me everyone who's ever imagined how to kill a galactic empire. We're going to teach the Zelthari why humans don't do eternal. The staff scrambled to execute orders. Patricia looked back at the hologram. 67 warships, each one crewed by soldiers who'd never faced real resistance. An empire built on fear and borrowed glory. You picked the wrong species to threaten, she whispered. Above Earth, War Master Thexanol waited for humanity's surrender, confident in his empire's inevitable victory. He had no idea what was coming. Helen Park burst into the war room with 17 people trailing behind her. Writers, engineers, game designers, and 3 professional dungeon masters who specialized in creating impossible scenarios. Patricia watched the eclectic group file in, some still in pajamas, one clutching a coffee mug shaped like a spaceship. You called for creative thinkers, Helen said. I brought the best. Good. We have 8 hours before the Zelthari deadline. I need unconventional warfare options that exploit their doctrinal rigidity. A man in a vintage Star Trek shirt raised his hand. Brandon Lee, military sci-fi author. Question: do they actually understand human psychology, or did they just memorize our tactical manuals? Memorized, Nina confirmed. They're pattern matching without comprehension. Brandon grinned. Then they're expecting us to either surrender or mount a heroic last stand. Fleet against fleet, honor and glory, all that nonsense. Correct, Patricia said. So we do neither. We confuse them until their doctrine breaks down. General Marcus Flynn entered, followed by a team carrying sealed containers. Admiral, you asked for Crazy Eddie Division's greatest hits. Fair warning, half of these were rejected for being too unstable. Perfect. Show me. Marcus opened the first container. Inside sat what looked like a children's toy. Kinetic confetti. Millions of microsatellites, each one programmed with basic evasive maneuvers. We scatter them across the battlefield. Their targeting systems will go insane trying to prioritize threats. They'll adapt, Ryan said. Sure, in about 6 hours. By then, we deploy Phase 2. Marcus revealed a second device. Holographic ghost ships. We project false signatures across the entire engagement zone. Make them think they're fighting 300 vessels when we've only got 30. A woman with purple hair spoke up. Katie Chen, game designer. That's good, but predictable. They'll eventually realize the ghosts aren't shooting back. You need the decoys to act aggressively. Make them waste ammunition on targets that taunt them. Can we do that? Patricia asked. Easily, Nina said. We program them with recorded combat chatter. Insults, challenges, the works. Make it personal. Ellen stepped forward. But why stop at confusion? These aliens copied our Roman Empire aesthetic without understanding why it fell. Let's teach them the lesson directly. I'm listening. Rome didn't fall to superior enemies. It fell to corruption, overextension, and barbarians who refused to fight by Roman rules. We become the barbarians. Hit and run. Asymmetric warfare. Make them chase ghosts while we dismantle their fleet, piece by piece. Brandon pulled out a tablet, sketching rapidly. Their formation is designed for a frontal assault. They've positioned their strongest ships at the center. Support vessels on the flanks. Classic hammer and inval setup. They're expecting us to throw ourselves at the center and break. What if we ignore the center entirely? One of the dungeon masters asked. Skip the boss fight and go straight for the treasure room, Ryan frowned. Their command ship is in the center of the formation. That's the treasure room. No, Patricia said slowly, understanding dawning. Their supply lines are the treasure. Marcus, do we have intel on their logistics? Some. They've got 3 massive supply vessels hanging back near Jupiter's orbit. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts. Everything needed for a prolonged occupation. Katie leaned over the hologram. Hit those first, not with ships. With something they can't see coming. Elaborate. You said they're bullies who've never faced real resistance. That means they've never dealt with sabotage, insurgency, or guerrilla tactics. They'll have minimal security on their rear assets because, in their experience, conquered species don't fight back. Helen nodded enthusiastically. We send stealth teams. Board those supply ships. Don't destroy them, capture them. Suddenly, the Zalthari fleet is cut off from resupply in enemy territory. We don't have stealth technology that advanced, Ryan protested. Yes, we do, Marcus said quietly. Project Phantom. Experimental ships with heat masking and electromagnetic baffling. They're not perfect, but against sensors calibrated for conventional warfare, they'll be invisible. Patricia felt the pieces falling into place. We split their attention. Decoys and harassment in front, surgical strikes behind. Make them fight on 2 fronts, while their doctrine only accounts for 1. Brandon started writing frantically, and we play into their psychology, their conquerors. They expect fear and desperation. Instead, we broadcast mockery. Every channel, every frequency. Jokes, memes, historical references to failed empires. Make them angry. Angry commanders make mistakes. Warmaster Thexanol already got mad when we laughed at him, Nina said. He moved up the deadline out of spite. Spite is good, Katie said. Spite is emotional. Emotional opponents abandon strategy for satisfaction. We bait him into doing something stupid. One of the dungeon masters spoke. In my campaigns, the key to beating an overconfident enemy is making them feel like they're winning right up until they're not. Give them a victory. Small, meaningless, but public. Let them think we're broken, then hit them when they're celebrating. Patricia looked at her assembled team of chaos agents and smiled. All right. Here's the plan. We stage a fake surrender. Broadcast it on all channels. Make it look desperate, defeated. While Thexanol is busy gloating, our stealth teams take the supply depot. Our decoy fleet draws the main force out of position. And then we introduce them to human creativity at its finest. What's that? Helen asked. Improvised explosive spite. Marcus, prep everything that was too crazy for regular warfare. Katie, write us some speeches that'll make them so mad they can't think straight. Brandon, you're in charge of psychological operations. Make them regret ever reading our books. The room erupted into controlled chaos as teams formed and plans crystallized. Above Earth, the Zalthari fleet waited in perfect formation, confident in their superiority. They had studied humanity's military history. They had not studied humanity's imagination. That was going to be their first mistake of many. The fake surrender broadcast went live at hour 11. Patricia watched from the war room as a carefully crafted message played across every frequency. Captain Derek Hayes appeared on screen, uniform disheveled, face expertly made up to look exhausted and defeated. War Master Thexanol, Derek said, voice breaking perfectly. Humanity cannot stand against the might of the Zalthari Empire. We surrender unconditionally. Please, spare our people. We're transmitting coordinates for our government leaders to discuss terms. On the Zalthari command ship, Thexanol's mandibles spread wide in triumph. His internal communications lit up with celebration. Patricia could hear it through the intercepted channels, the clicking and chittering of an empire that had never learned humility. He's buying it, Nina reported. The entire fleet is standing down to combat-ready posture. They think it's over. Phase 2, Patricia ordered. In the shadow of Jupiter, 3 Phantom-class stealth ships drifted toward the Zalthari supply depot. Commander Jake Morrison commanded the lead vessel, watching his sensors paint the massive supply ships ahead. Each one was 3 miles long, packed with enough fuel and ammunition to sustain the invasion fleet for years. No escort ships, his co-pilot whispered. They really left their supplies completely undefended. Why would they defend it? Jake replied. In their experience, defeated enemies don't fight back. Radio silence from here. Go to manual controls. The Phantom ships glided closer, their heat signatures masked, their electromagnetic profiles barely a whisper. The Zalthari sensors, calibrated for conventional warfare and expecting surrender, never registered the approaching threat. Jake's team docked with the first supply vessel. Breaching charges deployed silently. Airlocks cycled. 12 Marines in adaptive camouflage suits flowed into the ship like smoke. The Zalthari crew never knew what hit them. Back at Earth, Katie Chen's Psychological Warfare Division began broadcasting on every channel. The messages were designed by committee, refined by professionals, and absolutely devastating. Attention, Eternal Empire, a cheerful voice announced. We've been reviewing your military history. Congratulations on conquering the Vrel, a species that hadn't invented gunpowder yet, and the Morath, whose most advanced weapon was a pointy stick. Truly, your victories are legendary. Thexanol's mandibles clacked in fury. Silence that transmission. We've also noticed your empire is 6,000 years old and controls 400 systems. That's 1 new system every 15 years. At that rate, you'll control the galaxy in approximately 90 million years. Very eternal, much empire. Wow. The mocking continued. each broadcast more infuriating than the last. Brandon Lee had crafted them perfectly, hitting every psychological weak point in the Zalthari command structure. Did you know humans have a word for empires like yours? We call them flash in the pan. Look it up. Oh, wait, you can't, because you're about to lose your Wikipedia access. At Jupiter, Jake's team had secured all 3 supply vessels. The Zalthari crews were bound and confused, unable to comprehend how the defeated humans had appeared in their rear area. Supply depot secured, Jake transmitted on encrypted channels. Ready for Phase 3. Execute, Patricia ordered. The captured supply ships turned their communications arrays toward the main Zalthari fleet and broadcast a simple message in the Empire's own military code. Supply depot compromised. All vessels lost. Resupply impossible. On the command ship, Thexanol froze. His tactical officer's voice shook. War Master, we're receiving distress codes from the depot. The humans have taken our supplies. Impossible. They surrendered. Before Thexanol could respond, Earth's defense fleet decloaked. Not the mighty armada he'd expected, but 30 small, fast ships that scattered in every direction. Behind them, 300 holographic projections flickered to life, each one broadcasting false signatures and aggressive targeting locks. All ships, engage, Thexanol roared. The Zalthari fleet broke formation, exactly as Patricia had predicted. Their doctrine demanded immediate response to threats. Their training said concentrate fire and overwhelm, but there were too many targets, all moving erratically, all broadcasting insults and challenges. You couldn't hit water if you fell out of a boat. My grandmother flies better than you, and she's been dead for 30 years. Is that your best shot? I've seen better accuracy from a broken compass. The Zalthari fired, wasting precious ammunition on holographic ghosts. Their formation collapsed as ships maneuvered independently, each captain trying to score the killing blow that would restore their honor. Then Katie's division deployed the kinetic confetti. Billions of microsatellites scattered across the battlefield, each one broadcasting false signatures, jamming communications, and generally turning the entire engagement zone into electromagnetic chaos. I can't get a clean lock, a Zalthari gunner screamed. Target the real ships, Thexanol commanded. Which ones are real? Patricia watched the chaos unfold, her gamble paying off beautifully. The Zalthari had superior technology, but no experience with asymmetric warfare. They were trying to fight by their doctrine, while humanity threw the entire rulebook out the airlock. Now, she said quietly. Hidden among the decoys, Earth's real combat ships opened fire. Not at the Zalthari vessels, but at the microsatellites themselves. Precision strikes that turned the tiny devices into expanding clouds of shrapnel traveling at orbital velocity. The improvised debris field tore through the Zalthari formation. Shields designed to stop coherent energy weapons and missiles were useless against thousands of tiny impacts. Armor cracked, systems failed. Ships that had seemed invincible moments ago now tumbled through space, bleeding atmosphere and sparking with electrical fires. War Master, we're taking heavy casualties, an officer reported. We can't maintain formation in this debris field. Thexanol stared at his tactical display, watching his perfect formation disintegrate into chaos. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. Where was the honor? The glory? The clean tactical exchange his training had promised? Humans don't fight fair, he whispered. From Earth, Katie's final broadcast went out. Thanks for the supplies, by the way. Your logistics officer left a note saying these were meant to sustain you for 3 years. Very thoughtful. We'll put them to good use. Thexanol's world shattered. Cut off from resupply. Formation broken. Fleet scattered, and the humans were still laughing. Retreat, he said quietly. War Master? Retreat. All ships withdraw to Rally Point Sigma. The Zalthari fleet turned and ran. In the war room, Patricia allowed herself a small smile. Pursuit teams, let them go. We've made our point. Helen stepped beside her. They'll be back with reinforcements. I'm counting on it. By then, we'll have even better ideas. The Zalthari Empire convened an emergency war council 3 weeks later on their homeworld of Zalthar Prime. War Master Thexanol stood before the High Command, his chitinous plates dulled with shame, as he explained how a primitive species had humiliated the Eternal Empire. "They cheated," he said flatly. Supreme Commander Vexthara's compound eyes fixed on him with cold fury. "Explain how an inferior species cheats at war." "They fought without honor, without formation, without adherence to any tactical doctrine. They used deception, mockery, and weapons that served no purpose but chaos. And yet they won. A temporary victory. We were unprepared for their savage methods. With proper planning and overwhelming force, we will crush them." Vexthara clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "How many ships do you require?" 300 warships. 10 times what they faced. We will blockade their entire star system, destroy their orbital infrastructure, and reduce their planet to ash before they can employ their tricks again." "Approved. But Thexanol, if you fail again, you will be executed. The Empire does not tolerate repeated failure." Thexanol bowed. "I will not fail, Supreme Commander." On Earth, Patricia watched the intelligence reports with satisfaction. Orbital telescopes tracked the massive Zalthari fleet assembling at the edge of human space. 300 ships, just as predicted. "They're doing exactly what we expected," Ryan said. "Overwhelming force, traditional tactics, pure intimidation." "Because that's all they know," Patricia replied. "They read our military history and learned how to fight wars from 1,000 years ago. They have no concept of adaptation." Helen entered with her expanded team. The success at repelling the first invasion had convinced the government to give her unlimited resources. Now she had 50 writers, 100 engineers, and entire university departments working on creative warfare solutions. "We've been studying the captured supply ships," Helen said. "The Zalthari technology is impressive but rigid. Everything is designed for specific purposes with no room for improvisation. Their fusion reactors only work one way. Their weapons only fire in predetermined patterns. Their shields only block expected threats. They're an empire of engineers following manuals," Katie added. "Not a single creative thinker in the bunch." Brandon pulled up a holographic display. "We've also been analyzing their culture. The Zalthari don't have fiction. No novels, no movies, no games. Their entire entertainment industry is historical reenactments and documentary recordings. They literally cannot imagine scenarios that haven't already happened." Patricia stared. "You're telling me they've never played pretend?" "Never. Their psychology is fundamentally different from ours. They learn by rote, memorize patterns, and apply those patterns universally. When they encountered our Voyager probe and decoded our military history, they thought they'd found the instruction manual for galactic conquest." "But they only got half the story," Ryan said, understanding dawning. "They learned how we fought. They never learned how we think." "Exactly," Helen said. "Which brings me to our next phase. We don't just beat them again. We break their entire understanding of warfare." She activated a new display showing bizarre contraptions and impossible scenarios. Project Madness. "We're going to introduce the Zalthari Empire to concepts they've never encountered. Asymmetric warfare was just the appetizer. Now we serve the main course." Marcus Flynn arrived with his team, pushing carts loaded with devices that looked like they'd been assembled by mad scientists. "Admiral, I present the Nightmare Arsenal. Every weapon we've ever imagined but never built because they were too weird, too unpredictable, or too likely to get us all killed." He unveiled the first device, the quantum coin flip. It creates localized probability distortions. Basically, it makes random things happen. Missiles curve the wrong way. Shields activate backwards. Computers start running programs that don't exist. "That's not possible," Ryan protested. "It shouldn't be. But quantum mechanics is weird, and we've learned to weaponize that weirdness. The Zalthari shields are designed for predictable physics. This makes physics drunk." Katie presented her contribution, mimetic warfare. evolved. We don't just mock them. We inject ideas into their communications that spread like viruses. Doubt. Confusion. Questions they've never considered. What if their empire is wrong? What if there's another way? What if they've been lied to? Psychological warfare at the conceptual level, Patricia said. Better. We're hacking their culture. The Zalthari have no defense against subversive ideas because they've never encountered them. Their society is built on absolute obedience and unquestioned hierarchy. We introduce critical thinking and watch their command structure eat itself. A young engineer raised her hand nervously. Dr. Pragosha, Amy Lawson, Theoretical Physics. I have something that might be too crazy even for this room. Try me, Patricia said. Amy activated a hologram showing complex mathematical formulas. What if we don't fight their fleet at all? What if we convince their ships to fight each other? How? Spoofed communications. The Zalthari use rigid command protocols with authentication codes. We captured those codes from the supply ships. With the right modifications, we can inject false orders that appear to come from their own high command. Brandon's eyes lit up. We could order half their fleet to attack the other half. They'd follow orders without question because that's their nature. It gets better, Amy continued. Their ships have friend or foe identification systems based on signal patterns. We can alter those patterns, make their own vessels appear hostile to each other. Their automated defense systems would engage before the crews even knew what was happening. Helen laughed. We're going to make them shoot themselves. That's evil, Ryan said. That's asymmetric warfare against an opponent who doesn't understand deception, Patricia corrected. They'll adapt eventually, but not before we've turned their numerical advantage into a liability. Marcus revealed another device, and when they figure that out, we deploy the Confusion-class drones. They're designed to do nothing useful whatsoever. They fly erratically, broadcast nonsense, and explode into glitter when destroyed. Pure chaos with no tactical value except making the enemy waste time and resources trying to understand them. Why glitter? Ryan asked. Because it gets everywhere and they'll spend weeks cleaning it out of their ship systems. It's petty and perfect. Patricia looked at her assembled team of brilliant madness. 3 weeks ago, they'd been ordinary civilians and military personnel. Now they were architects of controlled chaos, weaponizing human creativity against an empire that had never learned to imagine. All right, she said. The Zalthari are bringing 300 ships to finish us off. Let's show them that in warfare, imagination beats intimidation every single time. Brandon, start crafting the mimetic payloads. Amy, prep the communication spoofing. Marcus, I want every chaotic weapon ready to deploy. Katie, make the most subversive propaganda humanity has ever created. What about me? Helen asked. You're going to coordinate everything. We're not just defending Earth anymore. We're teaching the Eternal Empire why humans don't stay conquered. The war room erupted into organized chaos as teams scattered to their tasks. Above Earth, humanity's small fleet prepared for round 2. 300 Zalthari warships were coming. They thought they knew what to expect. They were catastrophically wrong. The Zalthari armada arrived in perfect formation. 300 warships arranged in concentric spheres designed to crush any resistance through sheer overwhelming presence. War Master Thexanol stood on his command deck, watching Earth hang in the void like a prize waiting to be claimed. This time there will be no surrender, he announced to his fleet. We destroy their orbital stations, their ships, their capability to resist. The humans will learn what happens when primitives mock the Empire. His communications officer looked up. War Master, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Ignore it. Begin the attack. Sir, you should see this. The main screen activated. Patricia Carter appeared, sitting casually in a chair with a coffee mug, looking utterly unconcerned by the massive fleet outside her planet. Hello again, War Master, she said cheerfully. Thanks for bringing more ships. We were worried 300 wouldn't be enough. For the demonstration? Thexanol felt something cold settle in his thorax. What demonstration? You studied our military history, but you never read our science fiction. That's where we keep our really dangerous ideas. Science, proceed. Let me introduce you to human imagination at full power. Patricia snapped her fingers. Chaos erupted across the Zalthari fleet. Ships that had been maintaining perfect formation suddenly opened fire on their wingmates. Automated defense systems activated without warning, targeting vessels that had been allies seconds before. Commanders screamed contradictory orders as their communication systems fed them authentication codes from High Command, ordering immediate engagement with surrounding vessels. "What's happening?" Thexamal roared. "You're shooting yourselves," Patricia explained calmly. "Your authentication codes were delightfully easy to crack. Your ships are now receiving orders from what they believe is Zalthar Prime, telling them that elements of the fleet have been compromised and must be destroyed immediately. Since you never taught your people to question orders, they're following them perfectly. 50 Zalthari ships died in the first minute, killed by their own fleet." "Override the authentication," Thexanol commanded. "Already done, War Master," his officer replied. "But the damage protocols are locked. Our systems won't accept new codes without going through a manual reset that takes hours." Marcus Flynn's quantum coin flip devices activated next. Probability itself seemed to hiccup across the battlefield. Missiles launched by Zalthari ships curved backwards and struck their launchers. Shield generators activated in reverse, trapping ships inside their own defensive fields. Navigation computers calculated trajectories that violated basic physics and somehow succeeded, sending vessels tumbling into each other. "This isn't possible." Thexamo watched his fleet tear itself apart. "That's what we thought too," Patricia said. "Then we remembered that possible is just a failure of imagination. We made the impossible happen because we could imagine it first." Katie's mimetic warfare packages deployed across every Zalthari communication channel. Not insults this time, but questions. Simple, devastating questions that the Zalthari had never considered. Why do you serve an empire that sends you to die for conquest? What if there's a better way? What if your leaders are wrong? What if you could choose? On ships throughout the fleet, Zalthari crew members hesitated. These concepts were alien to them, but they took root in minds that had never encountered subversive thinking. Captains questioned orders for the first time in their lives. Soldiers lowered weapons. The rigid hierarchy that held the empire together began to fracture. Then the Confusion-class drones arrived. Thousands of them flying in patterns that defied tactical analysis, broadcasting signals that ranged from opera music to mathematical paradoxes. When Zalthari gunners destroyed them, they exploded into clouds of holographic glitter that clung to everything and disrupted sensors while displaying messages like, "Congratulations, you've defeated a birthday decoration." The psychological impact was devastating. The Zalthari had trained for honorable combat against worthy enemies. Instead, they were fighting weapons that seemed designed purely to humiliate them. Thexanolol watched his mighty armada reduced to chaos in less than 10 minutes. Ships fired on each other. Crews questioned orders. Systems failed in impossible ways. And through it all, the humans broadcasted their infuriating laughter. "Enough!" he screamed. "Full retreat! All ships withdraw!" But Amy's communication spoofing had anticipated this. Half the fleet received orders to retreat toward Jupiter. The other half received orders to retreat toward Mars. The two groups collided in a massive tangle of ships trying to flee in opposite directions. Patricia stood and walked closer to the camera. "War Master Thexanol, let me explain something about humanity. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've built empires and watched them fall. We've invented every form of warfare imaginable and then imagined new ones. You thought studying our history would prepare you to conquer us. You were wrong." "What do you want?" Thexanol asked, defeated. "I want you to go home and tell your Supreme Commander that Earth is not available for conquest. Tell her that humans don't just fight wars, we reimagine them. Tell her that every time she sends a fleet, we'll invent new nightmares she never dreamed possible. Tell her that the Eternal Empire just discovered what happens when you pick a fight with a species that treats imagination as a weapon." Thexanol looked at the ruins of his fleet, 200 ships destroyed or disabled. The survivors scattered and demoralized. His empire's invincible reputation shattered. "We will not return," he said quietly. Smart choice. Now leave our system and never come back. If you do, next time we won't be nice about it. The Zalthari fleet limped away, broken and humiliated. In the war room, Patricia's team erupted in cheers. They had defended Earth not with superior technology or overwhelming force, but with the one thing humanity had always possessed in abundance, the ability to imagine the impossible and then make it real.
Helen raised her coffee mug in salute.
To humanity. To imagination, Patricia replied. Above Earth, the defensive fleet stood down. The Zalthari were gone. Word would spread through the galaxy about the species that had defeated the Eternal Empire twice, using nothing but creativity and chaos. Other empires would learn. Other conquerors would reconsider. Humanity had sent a message to the stars. We might not be the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced, but we were the most imaginative. And in a universe full of species that followed rules, imagination was the ultimate weapon. The Eternal Empire would eventually fall, its rigid doctrines unable to adapt to a galaxy that had learned from Earth's example. That was a story for another day. For now, humanity had won, not through strength, but through the ability to ask one simple question.